Hi folks, and welcome to another demonstration for the Brisbane Garden and Plant Expo. I'm Paul Plant. Normally this weekend would have been the Brisbane Garden Plant Expo, but due to COVID restrictions, it was decided to delay it until next year, so it will be on next year, March 2022. So my workshop for today is propagating. If you know anything about me, I'm a bit of an addicted plant propagator. I love propagating virtually every single plant I get. I do apologise for a little bit of a wobble with my dog's under the table and is playing up. I'm a bit of an addictive plant propagator. When I buy plants, I take them home, I propagate them immediately. So I'm going to talk about some of these techniques that I use, which will hopefully give you some of that inspiration to do it yourself. So the first one I'm going to talk about is division, then cuttings, then seed propagating. So I'm going to go a little bit in a row. So one of the stories I start with is this one that people fall in love with. Monstera, Constellation, or Thai Constellation. Very expensive to buy, but I did buy one. The first thing I did when I got home, I cut it up. So from one plant, I got 4 plants. So I increased the value of the plant that I had. Now, I'll get in nice and close. So if you look, that's the leaf stalk. Goes down to a stem. There are roots already developing. If I want to, I can cut it right there so that it still has a root on it, and that will be a whole new plant. This part will produce a new baby plant from this point right here. So buying occasionally a really expensive plant is worthwhile if you see value in it to propagate it. So Thai Constellation, it's a Monstera, very easy to grow, very, very easy to propagate. Another one on that line, let me just put that down nice and carefully, is this little baby. That's Rhaphidophora, Tetrasperma, also known as mini Monstera. So I bought a fairly decent sized specimen, a 200ml pot. It had a couple of branches on it, so it was looking really nice against the trellis. First thing I did when I got it home, chopped it up into little bits. So this is one of those plants. It was just a single node with one leaf, one node, and it shot very fast. And as you can see, good root system already. Yes, I have had it for a few months, but this cutting technique works really, really well. So I did diverge, I do apologise. Division. Okay, here we go. Good old jungle warrior, the black foliage Zanzibar Gem. Now, if you look very carefully, when you buy it, you should be able to see little divisions in there. And it would be possible to remove the plant out of the pot, divide it, and then put it back in fresh pot. So I could quite easily divide that into 2. But more daring, I could divide that probably into 3 or 4. Going further, you can actually cut this into sections and make cuttings. Either a whole leaf, one of these whole parts, can be put into a pot, a propagating mix, and that will produce a new tuber and a new plant. You need about 6 months or so, so be patient. Or you can cut an individual leaf with a little bit of the stem attached, and that will also take about 6 months to produce a whole new plant. The easiest, fastest method is division, just taking one plant, dividing it into 2 or into 3. Now another plant for division are my dog, is the Alocasia. So this is Sarion, still a baby, but the original corm died and it sent up 2 fresh ones. So from one plant I've now got 2. I didn't do anything to it, the original one did die. So I can take that out of the pot, little tube, split it into 2, and I now have 2 new Sarions. And these are big, beautiful Alocasias to grow in pots or even in the ground. Division, curcuma. So I bought one from the local garden grocery store, chopped it up into bits. 2 have already shot. The third one is just sitting in these little tubes. I put it in this other pot just to hold them secure. Otherwise they flop around a little bit, but it's a great little idea to consider. So curcuma, division, separate those little cormlets into those parts. So that's mainly division. Actually, why not? I'll talk about my miscellaneous trait. I do a lot of miscellaneous plants. So we have, this was a philodendron Birkin that started to revert back to a philodendron Rojo Congo. So I liked it, so I pulled it off, I divided it from the original plant as a pup, and potted that up. And a couple of divisions of Calatheas I've got in here that were pups from other plants, and then some cuttings of some peperomias. So try to reuse pots when you buy flowering plants or pots of colour. If you can, use those trays again. It's a great way to save money. Cuttings. Now cuttings is, I think, one of the most reliable methods around. You've got Hoya cuttings, a nice long stalk. Give it at least 2 leaves, if not more, and it will produce roots, usually in about 3 months. I tend to leave these in the pots at least for 3 to 6 months before I pot them up any further. They do like to be a little bit root bound. Cuttings of the money plant, Pilea. The little pups that produced on the side of the plant or at the base of the plant can be removed and potted up individually into their own little tiny pots. So great plants to use for that. Polyscias, a favourite of mine. I chop the stems up into multiple pieces, put them into one big pot. So in there I've got around about 12 cuttings in a 200ml pot. Some might die. Odds are 90% success. So I'm quite happy with these ones. They are always really good to do in the middle of summer. So cuttings is a simple method. You just cut the stem into different parts. I always find that the younger growth at the top does best for most plants, but do a little bit of research. Some plants like old season growth, some plants like semi-hardwood, and some like the softwood cuttings. Seed. I'm going to try and keep this short. I've already gone for about 6 minutes. Okay, so with seeds, try to pre-germinate or pre-treat them before you pot them up. Now these are Alocasia brisbaneensis. I put them in a takeaway dish. In there is perlite and koi fibre, and I just clean the seed, put the seeds in there, wait till they germinate, and then all I need to do is hold the leaf and I prick it out very carefully. So then I get one with roots, and that's what I then pot up. So it's a very easy, reliable plant to germinate very, very fast. I'm going to do some potting up of this one. Anthuriums, very popular as indoor plants and outdoor plants. Now, mass planted, the seeds will germinate in a big mass, very hard to deal with. Eventually, what you need to do is to separate them into individual pots. So you do need time. Patience is the secret when it comes to propagating. I collect a lot of plants, a lot of rare plants, and I got some seed off this plant up in North Queensland. Put some seed into a pot, not knowing that each seed produces multiple little seedlings from it. So this had probably about 10 seeds put in it. Looks like I've got over 50 plants I've got to separate. So there's a lot of work in there, and even if I get 10 or 20% success, I will be very happy because I can then distribute those plants elsewhere. So it's a native gardenia, so keep an eye out for those. I'm going to spread them around to the botanic gardens predominantly and then try to sell some as well. Also, Lillypillies. Rather than put them into separate pots, I've collected some Syzygium wilsoni and put a whole lot of seeds into one pot. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 babies just popping up. Really hard to see the very thin ones, but I look forward to seeing them in due course. What else? Now this is Dorianthis Excelsior. It's native mostly to New South Wales. We have Doryanthes palmeri, which is better for Queensland. But this is how I grow them up into a 90mm square tube. So it's a good size, allows good root development. But these seeds, so thrilled. I soak these seeds for about 1 week in water, then I drain them out. And look what's happened. They started to germinate. Just going to lift one up. So that is it upside down. That's the seed. I don't know if the camera can focus on it. I don't know if it can. Hopefully it can. And I'll be sowing that like that into this media. Now normally you want to actually get it before it germinates, but it did it before I expected it. So I'll be putting it in this mix, this tray. And if you look, there's some more in here that are also germinating. So pre-treatment of your seeds is fantastic because it speeds up the germinating process. So this is the spear lily, the giant spear lily Dorianthis palmeri. So I've got well over 100 in here. So I've got a bit of work to do, and I'm hoping the inspiration I have given you gives you an idea what to do this weekend and in the weeks to come. Propagating is incredible. incredibly worthwhile, and I do recommend you give it a go. At the Brisbane Garden and Plant Expo, you'll have a huge opportunity to buy a range of plants which you should be able to propagate yourself at home. So hopefully I will see you next year in 2022 at the Brisbane Garden and Plant Expo. See you later and enjoy gardening, folks.